Hey kiddos, here is your programming example for how to program put a program into your calculator so that it will draw your picture for the line project. We're going to do the triangle example that we started in class the other day together so that you can see how it works. And so there are a couple things you need. Number one, you need your calculator. It would be helpful if you could push the buttons and follow along with me as we do this. And then you also probably need this programming page that I gave you on Tuesday for the triangle example. And if you have it, the actual triangle example where we wrote the equations of the lines so that you know what the equations are as we're going through this. Excuse me. So the first thing we're going to do, because we started this program in class together the other day, the first thing we're going to do is clear the memory out on our calculator because I want to start from the very beginning and I want us to all be able to follow the same steps, and the only way to do that is to get rid of what's in our calculator. So we're going to clear the memory, and to do that you press second and then plus sign, and then the numbers 7, then 1, and then 2. That will clear your memory, and so it erased the program that we started the other day, and it also reset all of our settings back to their standard mode. The thing that you need to know, okay, please, once you start your actual programming and you're putting your program into your calculator for your line project, do not clear the memory at any point when you're doing that because it'll wipe your program out. You'll have to start over. But since we wanted to start over, that's okay. So we're going to start with our program, which means we get to push the program button, which is right here where my little arrow is pointing. We're going to push program, and we're going to make a new one. So we're going to arrow over until it says new. And yes, we want to create a new, so you can either push 1 or hit enter. It doesn't matter. And we're going to name it. You can name it try like we did in class the other day. And Ellie, you can name it TRY because we're trying a program. Or we can name it TRI because that's short for triangle. I don't care which one you choose. So there it is. I've named it. And we hit enter. Now, like I said in class the other day, every time you write a new line of code or you give the program a new command, you have to make sure there's a colon in front of that command. Otherwise, you will get an error and it won't do what it's supposed to do. So each new command that you give the calculator for the program, there must be a colon in front. So the first thing we're going to tell it to do is clear out any drawings that might already be on your calculator. To do that, we're going to press second and then program. And it gives us this menu, and we want to clear draw, which is option number 1. So there's the first command in our program. So we're going to hit enter, next command. We want to tell it to not have the axes on. We want to turn the axes off. That's your XY coordinate here on the coordinate grid, and we want those to disappear. You don't want them behind your picture. So we're going to tell it to turn them off. So we're going to press second and then zoom, which is in the middle right under the screen. And we're going to select axes off, which is right here. So you're going to arrow down and then over till it's highlighted, and then you have to hit enter. So now we've told it axes off, so we can hit enter again. The next thing we are going to tell it is that we want it to be a connected graph. Now here is where my calculator differs from yours slightly. To tell it you want it to be connected, you're going to press mode. And you're going to get a menu that looks similar to mine, although it's not exactly like mine. You somewhere on yours are going to have a thing that says connected or dot. And you want to choose connected. Mine doesn't say connected, so I'm going to go down here to thick. I'm actually going to, and I'm going to hit enter. Okay, so that means that I'm telling it I want it to have a thick graph. I'm hoping that does what I want it to do. We'll find out. Now we're going to hit enter. So we can set up our new line of code, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our window. We want to be able to tell our calculator how big we want the window to be. Does it need to be a 10 by 10 window? Does it need to be a 20 by 20? And it's all going to depend on the size of the graph you use to write your equations. Some of you today picked up a 20 by 20 graph, and that's where you drew your picture, and that's fabulous. That's great. If that's the case, when you do your program, you will have to use the numbers that correspond to your graph. We're going to use negative 10 to 10 for today because that's what was on our graph. So we're going to set our window. It's going to start at negative 10, and we want to store that. So we're going to push the button that says stow, and when we do, it's going to give us this little arrow. And we got to tell it where to store it, so we're going to push the button that says VARS, V-A-R-S. It's right next to program. And we want to set the window, so that's option number 1. And we're just going to go through the first 6 things here. We're going to go 1, then 2, then 3, and all the way to 6. So the first one is 1. So we're going to choose X-Men, stored. Hit enter. Now it's got to go to positive 10. So we're going to press positive 10, store that, back to vars, back to window, but this time we want x max. So we're going to choose 2. So negative 10 is my minimum x, positive 10 is my maximum x. We're going to hit enter. We're going to set our scale, which means that we want it to count by ones as it's going across the axis. So we want to go 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't want our scale to be anything other than 1. So we're going to do 1, and we're going to store that, vars, window. This time it's x scale because that's the scale on our graph. And hit enter. Now we got to do the y values. So we want the y values to go from negative 10, store, vars, window. This time we want the y minimum, number 4. Our y max is 10, store, vars, 1. Y max is number 5. And then our scale, 1, store, vars, window. Y scale is number 6. We've set our window. So that's now going to make our graph be a 10 by 10 window. And so it will see everything from negative 10 to positive 10 in both directions. And the scale, it'll count by ones as it graphs. So hit enter, we're going to do our next command. Now we're going to start telling it that we want it to draw lines. And so the first thing we're going to do is tell it to draw the lines that went with that triangle. To tell it to draw a line, we're going to have to tell it we want it to draw a function for us because that's what we've done. We wrote an equation of a line, and so that's a function. So we're going to tell it to draw a function. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do second and then program. And you see option 6 down here says draw F. That stands for draw function. And that's what we want it to do. So we're going to hit number 6. And now it says draw F. This takes the place of your y equals. So this says y equals in fancy computer program speak. We're going to do our equation. And our equation was 3 over 2x plus 5. And so we're going to go back to here. So to do our 3 over 2x, we're going to do 3 divided by 2. Then to get the x, it's the button right next to alpha. And then plus 5. So there's my equation. Now I have to do the domain because I have to tell it where to start and stop my line. Otherwise, it's just going to draw one big long line and it won't look like anything but a bunch of weird lines on your paper. So you have to do the domain. In order to do that, we're going to separate our function and our domain with the division symbol. So you're going to hit divided by. And your domain must be combined and put together in parentheses. So we're going to open our parentheses. Now it says over here on my paper that our domain went from negative 6 to 0. We always start with the smallest value. So you always do the least value first, which was a negative 6. So I'm going to have to do the smallest one first. I'm going to do x. And I'm going to have to, and since it's the smallest one, it's going to be greater than that. So it's going to be greater than or equal to negative 6. To get the greater than or equal to sign, you're going to press second, and then the math button, which is directly under alpha. And you can see your symbols all right here. We want the greater than or equal to, which is number 4, and then our negative 6. Now we have to tell it the word and, because we want it to do this and the other thing. So to get to the word and, you're not going to type it in, you know, using the alpha key. You're going to actually have it as a command. So we're going to do second, math again. But this time we're going to go over to logic. And there are our words. You will only use and for this project. The other ones might come up later as you get into some higher math. But for now, we're just going to use and. So that's option 1. Now we have to do x is less than or equal to 0 because that was the other endpoint. So I have x. To get to my less than or equal to, I do second math. And there it is. It's number 6. It's less than or equal to 0. So there's my domain. So here's my equation. Y equals 3/2 x plus 5. My domain is from negative 6 to 0. Please make sure when you enter your domain, you always do least to greatest. And then close the parentheses to end the statement. If you don't close the parentheses, the calculator will get all confused. You'll get an error. Okay, now hit enter. We're going to do the equation for the other side of the triangle. So we're going to have to get this draw F again. To get draw F, remember we go second, program. Number 6 says draw F. So there's our y equals. And this time that equation was negative 3/2 x plus 5. So we're going to do negative 3 over 2x plus 5. So there's my equation. Now I have to do my domain. So I'm going to separate it with the division symbol and open my parentheses because the domain is one statement together. I'm going to have x is greater than or equal to, so I'm going to do second math, number 4. By the way, it will always be x is greater than or equal to, followed by x is less than or equal to. The greater than or equal to one should come first. So if I look over here, it says that that domain went from 0 to positive 6. So it's greater than or equal to 0 to get the word and. Second math over to logic, number 1. And then I have x is less than or equal to, so second math, number 6. And it's less than or equal to 6. So I hit my 6 again, close my parentheses to end the statement, and hit enter for the next command. Now we're going to do the base of the triangle, which was just a horizontal line. It's still going to be draw f because it's still a function. It was still y equals. So we're going to go second program, draw f is number 6. And the equation for that line was y equals negative 4. And that's all there was. So all I'm going to put is negative 4. That means y equals negative 4 right there. So now I have to do the domain. So do your division symbol and open your parentheses. And it says here my domain was from negative 6 to positive 6. So I'm going to have to do x is greater than or equal to. So second math, number 4. It's greater than or equal to negative 6. And second math, logic, number 1. X is less than or equal to. So second math, number 6. And it's less than or equal to positive 6. And I close my parentheses. That should give me the triangle, those 3 things. So this is one side of the triangle, this is another side of the triangle, and this is the base. Now we're going to hit enter because we're going to go ahead and do this vertical line. And I'm hoping that after this explanation, some of you who are very confused about why we use the y values when we're doing a vertical line instead of the x values for the domain will be less confused. A vertical line in and of itself is not a function. It has x values that repeat. As a matter of fact, x equals the same thing all over, which is why the equation is x equals. Vertical lines are not functions. So when I do this, I can't tell it to draw a function because it's not a function. I have to tell it to draw something else. So what I have to tell it to do is draw an inverse function, which is sort of like the opposite of a function. So I have to tell it to draw the inverse of what I want it to do. So like the inverse of y equals negative 4 would be x equals negative 4. So the inverse would be, instead of a horizontal line, it would be a vertical line. So I have to tell it, draw the inverse. So I do second program, and instead of draw f option 6, I'm going to choose option 8, draw inverse, because that's what I want it to do. So vertical lines will be draw inverse. And I want it to draw the inverse of x equals 2. I don't want it the inverse of x equals 2, but I want to draw the inverse at 2. So I want this to say 2. So draw f is like y equals. Draw inverse is like x equals. So this says x equals 2. Then I'm going to have to do my domain. Now the reason why I put x's here is because I'm telling it to draw the inverse of this. Okay? And so the inverse of domain, of domain is range. And since it's a vertical line, I found the range. And when I plug that in as x values, the calculator is going to understand this is an inverse function. It's going up and down, not side to side. And it will go ahead and invert those and take care of that. But we still type it with x's even though they were y values. So we're going to open our parentheses. We're going to do our x is greater than or equal to. So second math, number 4. And that vertical line, J, that we did went from negative 3 to positive 5. So x is going to be greater than or equal to negative 3. And, so second math over to logic number 1. And then we have x is less than or equal to, so second math number 6, positive 5. And close your parentheses, hit enter, you're done with your program. We are now going to draw a triangle in that vertical line. So what we have done so far is completed everything on the front side of that programming example page that I gave you. Now we're going to go down here into the back page, but we're not going to draw the circle. We're going to do everything else. We are not going to archive or unarchive. You shouldn't need to do that as long as you will not clear the memory on your calculator. If for some reason you start having a problem with clearing your memory, I will help you fix it and we'll archive, but you shouldn't need to archive. So, Here's how you look at your program. We've written it all. It magically, automatically saves. There is no save button. It will just automatically be there. So we're going to quit from here. We're going to go to second mode, which will quit. Now we have this clear screen. Don't panic. I promise it's still there. We're going to push program again. And this time you should see, now where it says execute, I have a program. That's because I just wrote one. I wrote that program called try. And I want to execute it. That's what I want to do. So I'm going to hit enter. And it's asking me, program triangle, is that what you want to do? I do. So I'm going to hit enter. And it's going to draw for me. There's one side. There's the other side. And there is the base. And the next one should be the vertical line. So it's drawn it for us. And all I had to do was go enter my equations in my domains. What you'll have to be very careful of is making sure you write the correct equations and that you keep your domains straight. Make sure you always do domain least to greatest. And if you have trouble with vertical lines, continue to ask and I will help you. But remember, vertical lines are draw inverse because they are the inverse of a function. And you still program your domains as x's no matter what. Okay? So that is the programming example. If you still need help, I'm available during tutoring. I will help you during class. We will work on this, but what you should be doing right now is continuing to work on writing those equations of those lines so that you can actually write the program and draw the picture. I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a good rest of your evening.